Hello, hello. It's hard to play guitar in these weird gaming chairs. I was gonna take the hat off. It's annoying me right now. My hair's short. It'll stay out of my eyes. Oh, my guitar gets so out of tune. That's a tragedy. That is a tragedy. Can everyone hear me? Hey, just randomly stumbled on this about to happen. Nice. Lucky you. Lucky me. Let me tune my guitar so I can play our stream intro song. I kind of got a new setup today. I'm still working on it, but forgot to tune my guitar before stream. I knew I was missing something. It's a lot to get ready, you know. It's not easy. A lot of labor value going into these streams. Yeah. Should I play some Pink Floyd because Roger Waters called Biden a war criminal on CNN? Yeah, shout out to Roger Waters. Oops. How do you play that? Sorry, I'm messing up now. I really screwed this up. There we go. All right. Now we can start the stream. Woo! Gotta play a song and start it out. Where's the mega bicep for 1,000 channel points button? I guess I need to make that a button. There you go. You can have it for free. Hello, Eddie, longtime fan. Should Marxists ally with the no fat movement? Would love to hear your thoughts. Is this real? Is this honest? An honest question? Because I know some people know. I don't watch the prawn. I don't watch the porn or partake in sex work. Because it's the commodification of women. It is the commodification of sex, and it's just a horribly exploitative trade. In that, you know, there's basically no regulation of these websites like Pornhub or whatever else, so they can use women on drugs. They can underpay women. They can, hire actors without getting them tested, and these things happen regularly. And I recommend. What really got me to pull the trigger and stop doing it, no pun intended, is Rev Left Radio, Proletarian Feminism. And this is Bridget O'Quillan and Esperanza Fonseca, who are former sex workers and communists and really smart. And they talk about the sex trade a lot better than I could. But as for allying with the no fap movement, I don't know, man. I think we should just let people do what they want. But, you know, if you're in those circles, if you're in those communities, if you're doing the no fap thing, yeah, you can spread communism. It's all about spreading communism where where you are. Like, I can't spread communism for work, with wrestling really, like at regular practices, but you know, in the combat sports community and wrestling community in general, I try and spread Marxism and relate Marxism to wrestling. So if you're doing no fap and you're in those, no fap Discord servers, yeah, send them my TikToks. Eric the Bread, yo, what's up, Eric? How's it going? I found your TikTok today. Where Pilgrim, hey everybody, hello. That was a fire takedown Roger Waters did on that piece of poop supposed interviewer. Yeah, we should watch that. We haven't watched that yet. That'll fit in well with watching Lenin's Imperialism today. You're talking about Lenin's Imperialism. Pink Floyd. Roger Waters, CNN. Biden. War criminal. Yeah, I mean, not just called Biden a war criminal, because like you could do that for Biden, voting for the Iraq War, which everybody's an anti-imperialist in hindsight, right? Everyone's an anti-imperialist once all the documents come out and we realize the tankies were right all along and the U.S. was lying us into whatever intervention we were getting into. You could call Biden a war criminal for that, but it's harder to call him a war criminal for Ukraine right now. I mean, like, the CNN, that's literally like one of the hearts of anti-Russian, pro-Ukraine proxy war propaganda, pro-weapons contractor propaganda. So I heard there's a full 27-minute version of the Roger Waters interview. That's crazy. I'm sure we'll find the WMD someday, but soon. One day. We just need to bomb every inch of Iraq and, then dig underground to make sure the WMDs aren't underground, and then just scoop up the entire country and throw it into space just to be sure there aren't any WMDs. I heard that's John Bolton's plan. Roger Waters helped shape my childhood, saying that's probably true for most guitar players, especially left-wing guitar players. Okay. Let me share my screen. Can y'all hear it? Let me know if you can't. Moon Factor says CNN is heavily funded and run by weapons contractor money as well as oil and multinational corporations. But of course, absolutely they are. It's muted on your end? Okay, I was worried about that. One sec. All right, now it should work. No, I can't hear it. What the heck? What is going on with my sound? Um, That's so weird.
CNN's Michael Smerconish to talk
How about
about the
now?
political messaging at his current This Is Not a Drill tour. This is a clip.
The Chinese are too busy encircling Taiwan as we speak. Okay?
They're not encircling Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China. And that's been absolutely accepted by the whole of the international community since 1948. And if you don't know that, you're not reading enough. Go and read about it.
Taiwan has never been part of communist China. Joining us now to discuss this absolutely riveting interview with Roger Waters is CNN political commentator and host.
He can't help but like throw his own little jab in there. Y'all can't hear it? Sweet. Awesome. He can't help but throw his own little jab in there. Taiwan has never been part of communist China. Dude, you're a colonizer. Like, that insult gets way overused in America and on the left, but like legitimately, Taiwan has been part of China since the Qing dynasty. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. QIN is how it's, or QUIN. But that was in the 17th century. You know, that was hundreds of years ago. And then Taiwan was ceded to Japan, the colonizers, the imperialists, and then became part of China again in 1945 because of the Kuomintang, who are, you know, nationalists and still to this day see themselves as part of China. Which is why the separatists hate the Taiwan flag that goofballs like Voosh are putting in their bio right now to support separatism. Yeah, but Roger Waters is 100% right. So, of course, he's getting smeared. And the other thing they do, the other tactic is they try and make you seem like a joke, right? If anyone who's actually saying the truth, like, ha ha ha, this is hilarious. He said Taiwan's part of China, ha 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 ha. You know, they'll just make it like seem like it's laughable because they don't have a real argument. So they just got to get people to dismiss it on its face.
Host of CNN Smerconish, Michael Smerconish. And people should go watch all 28 minutes of this discussion because, as I said, it's fascinating, it's riveting. Michael, I know you're a big Pink Floyd fan, as am I. Roger Waters has these controversial, some would say, wild views, but you engaged him on this. Go ahead.
It's not a hot mic, right? This is not a one-off that all of a sudden an entertainer has to be apologetic over. He's celebratory in his views. And there's a warning, John, when you go to the show, which I did Saturday night, and there's an announcement that he makes, kind of tongue-in-cheek, where he says, if you're one of these people who loves Pink Floyd but can't stand Roger's politics, then I suggest right now you F off to the bar. And there's a big roar from the crowd, and then he gets into the show. So he views going out and performing as an opportunity to play his music, but also to pull up a soapbox and to spread his political message. My point is,
yes, and it's awesome. It's awesome. And it's funny how shocked CNN is. Like, you know, this was not a hot mic. He really thinks Taiwan has been part of China for hundreds of years, because it has. And that the U.S. is doing a proxy war in Ukraine, because that's what all the evidence points to. But we haven't even covered that on CNN. So how does he know this? How has this happened? But as socialists and communists, we need to embrace stuff like this. Like, realistically, Americans love celebrities. And, you know, I was playing a Pink Floyd song before we started the show. I like Roger Waters too. Americans look up to these people. They like these people. And I'm not saying we need to embrace everyone, right? But like folks like Diego Maradona, you know, people always are quick to point out his imperfections. But he's like one of the greatest soccer players of all time. He was a staunch supporter of Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez, Evo Morales. We need to embrace stuff like that. And Roger Waters is a figure in the U.S. who's popular. I mean, in the U.S. and the UK, who's extremely popular with every generation, really. Because, you know, Pink Floyd was obviously popular with parents or grandparents' generation of, you know, us. But then it's also become, repopular with younger people as well. There was a Marxist comrade, I believe, from China. Yeah, they were from China, and they were messaging me saying, and they sent me a message or left a comment saying, you guys need to get like celebrities on your side, get celebrities in the Communist Party, or people who have the money to fund it. Like, this is just thinking realistically, like we're such Puritans in the U.S. As communists. It's like we do need to be rigorous in our criticism and in our theory and in our study, but we also need to be pragmatic in our organizing efforts and in how we, do propaganda. And having Roger Waters on our side is great. And he like reads the gray zone and stuff.
Is he welcomes this kind of engagement. So there was no surprise here when we sat down that I would want to talk about things like Taiwan, things like China, Ukraine, Russia, all of which we disagreed over. But I think we were kind of like two guys in a bar having a cocktail or a beer and disagreeing about politics.
Let's play the part where you spoke about Ukraine with him.
In the current show, you've got a montage of war criminals, according to you, and a picture apparently of President Biden on the screen, and it says, just getting started. What's that all about?
President Joe Biden?
Yeah.
Well, he's fueling the fire in the Ukraine for a start. That is a huge crime. Why won't the United States of America encourage Zelensky, the president, to negotiate, obviating the need for this horrific, horrendous war that's killing?
You're blaming,
we don't know how many Ukrainians.
but you're blaming the party that got invaded. Come on, you've got it reversed.
Very interesting. He told you haven't been reading enough, or if you think certain things, maybe generally he was speaking. I just wonder what is he reading that he has some of these positions. Obviously, it's very controversial when there is use of force, when there is any nation that is involved in another war, and the U.S. is providing a lot of weapons. But
he's reading Consortium News. He's reading The Gray Zone. Probably watch Russell Brand's YouTube channel. He's reading journalists like John Pilger. And people like Glenn Greenwald, like real investigative journalists. And those two are like journalists who don't even necessarily share my politics, right? Like Glenn calls himself a libertarian, and John Pilger, I don't know what he is, but he's an extremely well-respected journalist from doing years and years of good reporting. And like there was an effort to call John Pilger a Russian plant at the beginning of the U.S. proxy war in Ukraine. He's been a journalist since like the 70s on the front lines of this stuff. And CNN's just shocked. What's he reading? I don't know, but nobody watches you guys anymore. Nobody believes you guys. CNN and the Democratic corporate media is one of the best campaign tools for Trump. It's like that video we did today about Matt Walsh and Jordan Peterson being the mirror of wokeism. How like these right-wing anti-PC figures are able to get so popular and make so much money just owning the libs without ever talking about class. But the libs are also to blame for being so easy to attack. Not in every case. Sometimes the conservatives, the mirrors of wokeism, are just picking on people for like stuff they can't control in their identity and whatnot. But CNN covered Trump so much, gave him so many free clicks, and he's just like, fake news media. And everybody knows that's true. Everybody knows CNN and MSNBC are, legit fake news. And if you were paying attention to a campaign, like if you were paying attention to the Bernie campaign, it was just so obvious, that all of their coverage and all of their everything they did, including organizing the debates, was against him. So yeah, that message resonated with people, and CNN and MSNBC played a huge role in helping Trump win.
what did you make of what he was saying there, that the U.S. should be urging Zelensky basically to give up land to Russia?
Right. Well, I totally disagree with his perception of the situation in Ukraine. Even if you accept that there was saber rattling on the part of NATO by coming closer to Russian borders, it doesn't excuse the bloodshed that resulted from Putin's invasion of Ukraine. I mean, to me, it's black and white. I assume that he would say the same thing. Brianna, what interests me as well about all this is...
Okay, sorry to pause it so much, but that's hilarious to me. Because I always say the U.S. wants you to see it in black and white as a comic book. And... Smirkanish is like, no, it's literally black and white. Like, Putin's literally evil, and Ukraine are literally the crusaders of all that is holy and good. Like, it's literally Emperor Palpatine versus Luke Skywalker. if Luke Skywalker was a neo-Nazi.
Is that this show is an enormous and I would think expensive production. He's in the midst of a tour of the United States right now, and yet he's seemingly unconcerned about the impact that this could have on the box office. And it remains to be seen, you know, when the tour is over and the receipts get calculated, how did that all play? But Roger Waters doesn't seem to care. He's going to go out and play his music and spread his political message at the same time.
Sorry, I changed my studio setup today. I'm having trouble muting and unmuting my mic real fast. These people are the embodiment of capitalism. Like when Marx was talking about bourgeois ideologues, this is what he meant. CNN is bourgeois ideologues distilled, crystallized into people. You know, what will the market say about this, Roger? Think of your ticket sales. Dude, he's like 70 years old and he's probably a bajillionaire. He probably doesn't care about accumulating vast amounts of wealth and hoarding vast amounts of personal wealth in a bank account and taking it with him till he's dead. You know, that's not really ever what Pink Floyd has been about. Like, how can you say that? Have you heard the song Money? Have you heard the song Money by Pink Floyd? And you really are going to tell Roger Waters. Sorry, I rolled over my light. You're going to tell Roger Waters he needs to worry about the ticket sales? I think I know how to play Money. Whatever. Close enough. These guys wrote a song about how, you know, money runs the world and it corrupts everything. You're just like, think of the market, Roger. You guys are a joke.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the Chinese officials are actually retweeting a full clip of this interview, particularly that part of him remarking about China and Taiwan. Michael, it's a terrific interview. Again, people should go watch the whole thing. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, people should go watch the whole thing. They think that's going to make people think like Roger Waters is crazy. And like they throw that in about people boycotting his concert at the end. Like people are really about to boycott Roger Waters because Michael Smirkanish said to on CNN. Oh, I was wearing my Pink Floyd shirt earlier today. I wish I wouldn't have gone in and run in it. I would have worn it, but I got all sweaty. But like these people are ridiculous, and this shows why we need to get popular media figures on our side. Moon Factor earlier said that could backfire, and it definitely could. And they're gonna smear us regardless and call us champagne socialists regardless. But we want, you know, celebrities who are taken seriously by the majority, celebrities who are actually beloved, you know, like Roger Waters, that has a real connection through his music to a lot of people. And that's why it's so funny, because CNN is so widely despised. You know, nobody likes CNN. They know they're liars and liars for violent, horrific imperialism, like the Iraq War. And the idea that they think, you know, they could be like, boycott Roger Waters. Go watch this interview of him destroying us, you know, and then boycott him. Like, people are going to watch that interview and they're going to like Roger Waters more. And they're going to continue to realize that China and Russia are not the aggressors on the global stage. And it's the imperialists who own and write checks and advertise with CNN. Let's see what the chat's got to say. He defended China too. Yeah, he said Taiwan has been part of China forever. What a beast, right? What just fell? Oh, one of my roommates just threw me some chocolate under the door. That's sick. Oh. Like, I've been telling people this on TikTok. Imagine China or Russia, especially Russia, because Alaska's close to Russia and there's been fighting over that territory. Imagine if they said, you know, this is the analogy for Taiwan. We're going to encourage separatist movements there. You know, we're going to fund separatist, violent, extremist movements as much as we can. and promote them as much as we can, who want to separate Alaska from the U.S., even though 94% of Alaskans or whatever see themselves as part of the U.S. That's what it is in Taiwan, who see themselves as part of China. It's a very small number of separatists. And then Xi Jinping visits Alaska and encourages them to, fight for their freedom and democracy against the U.S. and cut off from the U.S. and become an ally of China so they can set up military bases there and launch destabilization efforts against the U.S. and regime change efforts. You really think the U.S. would let that stand? I guess people don't understand because some people don't get it because it's being framed as, Nancy Pelosi just wanted to go on a diplomatic mission to Taiwan, but China won't let her. What's wrong with them? Well, you have to understand the context, right? You have to understand what she's actually doing there. And Taiwan has been part of China much longer than Alaska or Hawaii have been part of the U.S. Much longer. I think Xi Jinping should go to Puerto Rico. You guys should become a state. Or become an independent country so you can join Belt and Road. But my toys say made in Taiwan, so Taiwan is a country. Fair point. Average Vouch fan argument. I just saw a tweet saying there's a plane load of U.S. senators en route to Taipei. That would be terrible. That would be so bad. Do y'all think greatness is a transferable skill? Why does Roger Waters have coded music and politics? It probably is in some ways, Hard work pays off in anything. Eddie, we are witnessing the great realignment. The liberals are cheering on the FBI raiding Ruhu movement. Yes, did a TikTok about that. Very, very strange to see liberals arguing for the FBI to crack down on people. A great Ukraine deception. Get ready, it's gonna get bad. Yeah. It's just liberals showing their true colors. But yeah, the repression and censorship is getting bad. I was thinking about that today. I don't know if the way they came after Assange was so fucked. The way they came after Assange was so illegal and open and brazen. It was scary, But that's also the game we play, I could always go into exile like Lenin. Sovereign nation of Hawaii. Exactly. And talk about a place that has much more right to their own sovereignty than freaking Taiwan, who doesn't even want to separate from China. Are you on TikTok still? Sorry, I stuttered. I thought they got you. Yeah, we started another account. We're back up to 65K. I'll send it your way.
Now that it's officially June.
We got to go to the bathroom here. Copy link. And send. All right, I'm going to pull up something for y'all to watch while I run to pee. Got to pull up something cool. What do people want to watch? Hey, Eddie, I found this video that debunks 5 myths about Stalin. Oh, that could be cool. Okay, we might watch that later. Actually, watch this video because I already watched this and I can react to it. But this is just Scott Ritter.
I didn't think I had time for college, but with double...
Dang it, it's so loud. This is just Scott Ritter, who's the UN weapons specialist, who blew the whistle on WMDs during the Iraq War. Now he's been smeared and attacked a bunch by the corporate media, but he knows his stuff about Ukraine and military strategy. So he's been following the whole thing, and this is him giving an update to Richard Medhurst, who's one of the best journalists in the game right now. So if you don't follow Richard, what are you doing? Seriously, I report on Richard. I use his reporting so much. So BRB.P.
Well, demilitarization is taking place as we speak. Now, this is made more complicated by the fact that Russia is now, required to destroy tens of billions of dollars of additional equipment that's being, poured into Ukraine by the West on a daily basis. Every day you hear another nation's providing them with more Su-25 fighters. Another nation would provide them with, HIP helicopters. Another nation, 200 tanks. Another nation, 400 APCs. Another nation, 60 artillery pieces. That's a heck of a lot of equipment. And it's being received by the Ukrainians, absorbed, and then sent to the battlefield, and then Russia has to destroy it. If you think about it, Russia has not only destroyed the inventory of the second largest military in Europe, which was the Ukrainian army, trained to NATO standards, equipped with modern equipment. They not only destroyed that, but they've now destroyed basically what amounts to NATO's strategic military reserve, because NATO's been pouring in all of its reserve capability to Ukraine, and that's being destroyed. Now NATO's being tasked with coming up and giving up its operational capabilities. And this is a different question altogether. I mean, NATO's given up so much ammunition right now that if NATO were to go to war with Russia, they run out of artillery ammunition in 14 days. And the Russians will never run out of artillery ammunition. So, the war ends at that point, and NATO recognizes this. There's a growing recognition in the West that Ukraine can't win this war, and that to continue pouring weapons and money into Ukraine, one, you're never going to get the money back, and two, not only is the equipment going to be destroyed or captured by the Russians, but you're drawing down the very equipment you need to stand up to Russia if you truly believe that Russia will continue this aggression once the Ukrainian problem is resolved. I don't believe Russia will, but there's many people in NATO and Europe who do believe that. And if that's what you believe, then you should make sure that you have the resources necessary to deter that.
Well,
NATO's
someone's
giving
making a
up-
lot of money either.
Kind of lagging out now, but yeah, I mean, I've noticed this too. Like, it's not like anybody's come and said sorry. Sorry, I was wrong about Ukraine the whole time. And you were right about the U.S. doing a proxy war. But there are way more people recognizing it now, and there's way less of like just an all-out, assault against us anytime we criticize Ukrainian nationalism or what the U.S. is doing in Ukraine. But I mean, that could also be, the State Department isn't as worried about it anymore. I mean, I've had people call me a conspiracy theorist for talking about State Department astroturfing certain tweets, or using bots to at least like certain kinds of content. And like, it's been proven in Nicaragua, Cuba, Venezuela. I don't know. There are other times that I'm drawing a blank on right now, but it's been proven in multiple cases that they were doing this at times when they're trying to do regime change. And like, I'm losing my breath from talking too fast. But Caitlin Johnstone has been covering really closely like the all-out propaganda war surrounding the conflict in Ukraine, including, the like online harassment, which Jackson Hinkle revealed last week, actually, that it's there was a Discord server where a member of the Ukrainian State Department was coordinating attacks on different accounts, right? So they almost surely coordinated mass reports against, I mean, there was proof of them coordinating mass reports against Jackson Hinkle and Jimmy Dore. Who knows? I'm sure they did us or some other kind of Discord server like that mass reported our account that got taken down because it was right, as the proxy war started. And we made like 3-4 videos about Ukraine and Russia before we got taken down. And yeah, so now there's proof that it was coordinated. And I think that's probably slowing down a little bit. Like, especially now that they've been exposed. Like, I made a video about it that got quite a few views. Jackson was tweeting about it and making videos about it. I'm sure Jimmy Dore did as well. I didn't see it, but I'm sure he did. So, yeah. People are coming around. Again, nobody said sorry, but I'm not worried about people saying sorry. I just want people to know what the heck's going on. Like, it's ridiculous. You have people. What actually pisses me off is when I see well-meaning people or people I care about and like who have a Ukraine flag in their bio because they're legitimately getting deceived into believing like they're supporting a good cause. So yeah, I'm glad people are coming around or breaking through the propaganda. We have a real anti-imperialist bloc on the left. There's a real Marxist-Leninist-esque anti-imperialist bloc on the American left now. We're constantly getting smeared. We're constantly getting smeared, but it's worth it because we're breaking through to a lot of people and educating a lot of people. And you know, although the empire is going to crack down on us, knock on wood, I don't know that they have the same power that they once did. You know, they've been exposed for, you know, basically killing and locking in jail every meaningful leader during the Black Panther movement, and you know, during the era of McCarthyism in general. Just basically locking up or killing anybody who advocated communism. So, Petamillo, hi Eddie, hello, welcome back, comrade. Brush, finally caught a live stream. Glad you could make it. Happy to have you. That new Ask Scott Ritter YouTube channel is not my favorite, but I think it'll be good for normies. Yeah, I think you should watch Scott Ritter when he gets interviewed by Richard Medhurst. Because Richard Medhurst gives him good questions from, you know, basically like a Marxist-Leninist perspective. I don't know if Richard is, but he acts like one. He has the politics of one for the most part. And yeah, because like Scott Ritter's political opinions are poop. It's like a military guy who worked at the UN. You know, he like hates communism and stuff, but he's just a good military strategist. And that's something like, dude, that's something that's like literally impossible for like rad libs or Twitter NPCs or, you know, super online leftists or Vouch fan leftists. Like, it is impossible to look at someone like Scott Ritter and be like, you know, I can take what he says that's factual and true, you know, and then criticize the things I disagree with or the places I think he's being unfactual. Like, it's such a bulwark against learning, the fact that nobody in the American left, you know, wants to read anyone outside their ideology. And they just, you know, dismiss people like Scott Ritter. Because one, that allows, you know, the UN and the corporate propaganda to say a couple bad things about Scott Ritter and totally destroy his reputation and get him canceled. But two, you know, you can learn things from anyone. Like Hegel basically said, the truth is getting lost everywhere. You know, you should steel man everyone's argument. Think about what they're actually saying. What are they actually trying to say? You know, even if they're not that articulate or they're not that politically enlightened, where are they actually coming from? And then try and meet them there and explain, you know, Marxism to them from the truth. You know, you don't have to sugarcoat anything or lie. Just explain how exploitation works and stuff. I promise it works. I promise. And you also have to study so you understand it yourself. Speaking of which, all the social media. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Speaking of which, we're gonna do Lenin's Imperialism in a sec. But all the social media companies are hiring spook executives for moderation teams. Yeah, I tried to call that out right away when it happened with TikTok. Because TikTok literally hired NATO executives as their content managers. And this was after I got banned. All right, so it was a former Twitter manager. And then they came over to TikTok. And I'm like, this ain't good for me. But I called it out and it got like, somehow you guys blew it up in a little bit, like more than I thought it would. I think it got like 4,000 likes and over 10,000 views. And the more you can call it out, the more you're protected, right? And the bigger your audience is, the more you're protected, because then it looks really bad for them if they take me down, you know, or if they take us down. All right. Let's talk about Lenin's imperialism a little bit. So the chapter that we talked about last time was about how capitalism transitions from its free competition stage into its monopoly stage, where you have these monopolies controlling things. And that was a good chapter because it shows us how to update Marx's analysis. It showed us how Lenin updated Marx's analysis beyond Marx. And it demonstrates how Marxism, as Gabriel Rockhill says, is not dogmatic or stagnant. It's a living, breathing science and collective tradition, that people are constantly adding to, and that needs to be added to in the modern day as well. So Lenin shows how to do that. He analyzes imperialism in his age. I've said Vijay Prasad's Washington Bullets is sort of like an extension onto Lenin's imperialism, builds on his analysis and analyzes how finance capital has come to really dominate the whole globe in the 21st century. And the U.S. uses these hybrid wars with all sorts of different covert regime change efforts to create regime change in countries they want and destabilize those countries politically and economically. So that was last time. This time, we're going to talk about export capital. Now, export capital will be a shorter chapter, but it's an important one. And it's one of those like scientific points, one of those like small details in Marxist theory that is like super vital for understanding geopolitics and understanding how imperialism works and how imperialism is an economic system. Right. So after the sort of dialectical inversion where capitalism transforms from a system based on free market competition to its imperialist monopoly stage, you also have a dialectical inversion of what countries are exporting. Right? So previously, countries are producing commodities and trading commodities. I can produce a bunch of gold in my country. You can produce a bunch of wool in your country. When you need gold and I need wool, we'll trade. That's exporting commodities. When you sell them in a market. Exporting capital is exporting value that can create more value. So exporting like an oil rig, exporting a manufacturing facility, exporting something that's going to make you more money. So what the U.S. does, like for example, what they did in Venezuela, which made Venezuela's economy dependent on oil and gave them what's called Dutch disease. They exported a bunch of oil rigs, a bunch of capital, and then did everything they could to control Venezuela's politics to make sure there were no labor regulations. None of that money made off the oil wealth was going to social programs. All of it had to go to these Western transnationals. And it made the country extremely dependent on oil, which is what export capital does, especially when you have the U.S. financial system, which is something Lenin didn't get to analyze because it hadn't come about. Yeah, it wouldn't come about till after World War II. But especially with the U.S. financial system, they're really able to repress the other industries in these countries and the national economy of these countries. Right? And this is why socialist countries have to do so much to build up their productive forces when the workers first take power in countries who are colonized, countries like China and Cuba. So Lenin noticed that capitalism develops spasmodically, so all over the place. As we said last time, a bunch of countries in the West accumulated capital much faster, partly through exporting capital and controlling countries in the global South and elsewhere. So this move to imperialism and capitalism's monopoly imperialist stage leads to super accumulation in the advanced capitalist countries. So this superabundance does not mean an alleviation of poverty or more money for the masses. It leads capitalists to export more capital in search of further exploitation. So once their profits hit this super profit level, they don't say, okay, now that we're making super profits instead of profits, let's give some to the working class. No, they just say we can expand now, we can export more capital, and they then have to maintain those super profits and constantly expand them. There's no going backwards because there's no control over capitalism. It's just an anarchic system that accumulates and expands and concentrates. And imperialism is just a product of that. And export capital is what makes imperialism an economic system rather than just a political policy, right? There are political policies like invading Iraq was a political and military decision. But the point was to allow Western multinational corporations to set up a bunch of oil rigs and, a bunch of mining reserves, and also make sure that the workers in Iraq weren't organized, they weren't getting any social welfare programs, they weren't getting any benefits for themselves, and none of that money was going to develop the Iraqi economy. The transnational oil companies wanted it all to go to them. And it did because of the political policy of destabilizing and occupying Iraq, but also the policy of exporting capital, oil rigs, or value in the form of machinery or tools or whatever else that, when mixed with labor, creates more value. Export capital, or capital in general. So there's a massive increase in capital invested abroad from 1862 to 1914. So that's something Lenin notices, mostly in the UK, France, and Germany. So this is just proof that these countries are exporting capital and investing it in the colonies, which is, as we said last time, spreading capitalism to these countries, right? So a lot of these countries during Lenin's day had not yet developed capitalism. They had some other mode of production. But with the export of capital and with the production of more commodities, you do have the development of capitalism. But it's like in Venezuela, it's a spasmodic capitalism decided by the colonizers and by the imperialist capitalists. So Venezuela got what economists call Dutch disease, where their economy was completely dependent on oil because of all the export capital from the oil capitalists, and the fact that they were extracting all the surplus and none of it was being reinvested in Venezuela. So you do have, imperialism spreads capitalism globally and makes capitalism a global phenomenon, divides up all the remaining territory of the world, essentially, except for a few remote spots. But it still holds the productive forces from developing in the countries where capital's exported to, right? So it brings capitalism, but it doesn't bring development, because all of the surplus, all of the resources are being sucked to the imperialist countries, and the labor rights and the organizing efforts of workers in whatever country is being having their wealth stolen and exploited from them are kept zilch through violence and state suppression. So that's imperialism. So beginning of the 20th century is when imperialism starts to get ridiculous, and these countries are just making vast super profits off of exporting capital to colonies. Lenin notices that France is mostly using export loans and then using usury to make money. So basically loaning a bunch of money to other countries and then jacking up the interest super high, which is an early form of the debt trapping that we see now with the IMF and World Bank, and really, financial imperialism in the modern era overall, where the IMF and World Bank are by far the biggest financial organizations on the global stage. And they'll say, we'll give you all this financing. It's called a structural adjustment loan. We'll give you all this financing, but you have to adjust your government structure. No more social welfare programs for workers, no more unions, no more Communist Party, and then we'll give you all this money. And of course, that money gets accumulated by the comprador capitalist class in the country being imperialized, and it leads to massive accumulation in the imperialist country. And it also leads these countries to become trapped in debt. Right, so you're constantly paying because you have to pay with interest, while sinking further and further and further and further into debt. And the IMF and World Bank never let you restructure. So France, all the way back in the early 20th century, was doing this technique. And we see how capitalism, it can't be reformed. It's been doing this stuff forever. Right, it's been doing this stuff forever. Their techniques and their strategies have just developed and gotten worse. Right, and the only reason that the U.S. is losing unipolar hegemonic control is because of a handful of countries moving towards socialism and making a concerted effort, to fight imperialist capitalism. But these imperialist strategies have been developing, coming about forever. And the only way to really fight them is with socialism. Nationalizing those banks that are trapping people in debt and using them to actually help countries develop. creating a Central African Bank, which is what Muammar Gaddafi wanted to do and what Thomas Sankara wanted to do, so Africa could give themselves developmental financing rather than be reliant on the Western-controlled institutions. Gaddafi and Thomas Sankara were both killed for doing that by NATO-led intervention with Gaddafi, and I believe Belgium actually led, for the most part, the effort to overthrow Sankara in Burkina Faso, but the U.S. was involved. Structural adjustment loans. So Lenin says that banks in the colonies, in the colonized countries or the imperialized countries, play a huge role in the development of finance capital and its control. And it's, again, something incredible that he was noticing all the way back then, because since Lenin's time, this has developed to an incredible extent. You know, like I said, we basically have global control of finance capital. All of these smaller banks, like the Asian Development Bank in Asia, which you'd think would belong to an Asian country, but no, it's controlled by the West. It's controlled by the U.S. They have these financial arms and these financial and trade agreements, as well as these banks everywhere. And they're all subservient to the IMF, the World Bank in Washington, the U.S. State Department. So having banks all around the world which are loyal to the West is, you know, essential in the control of finance capital, because they can collaborate, they can coordinate and work together in the interests of whoever the top dogs are, the top shareholders who are making these top-down decisions. Even though, you know, we're not allowed to do socialism because it might lead to a dictatorship, as we allow like a handful of bankers to control all of the powerful financial and economic apparatuses in the world. It's ridiculous how much capital has concentrated at this point, and how much finance capital is concentrated and created, you know, oligarchy in the U.S. and in Western Europe, and as well as all these imperialist apparatuses to do what they want all over the world. So yeah, why did I want to read this chapter? For one, the importance of understanding the economics of imperialism, because you need to understand imperialism as an economic system, not as a political policy. You know, since Kautsky, who Lenin argues against in this, they've been, you know, trying to say that imperialism is just a political policy. You know, and if we vote for enough AOCs, eventually imperialism will go away. It's not true. Imperialism is driven by capital. You know, and this is why you have to look at what is going on in Ukraine. It's the U.S. who has been, you know, constantly pushing towards Russia's borders, because Russia has been going against their economic interests, right? If the way CNN does propaganda is they leave out vital facts, of course, but then they only talk about things through a political lens. You know, Russia invaded, therefore Russia evil. You know, well, why did they invade? What was going on in the Donbass? What, you know, economic interest does the U.S. have there? What kind of capital would they like to export to Ukraine, or have they been exporting? What kind of ports are there for Russia that the U.S. is trying to control? That's one of Russia's major ports, one of their most vital ports that the Battle of Stalingrad was fought over, that, you know, the U.S. could have controlled. If they control Ukraine and block off Russia and enforce sanctions on Russia, which they have been doing. So unless you understand the economic interests, you can't fully understand issues of imperialism and anti-imperialism. Is why part of the reason I wanted to read that chapter. And the same, I mean, I use Ukraine because it's a modern example, but this happens with Venezuela so much. People are like, you know, if socialism works, why is Venezuela dependent on oil? Why couldn't they diversify their economy? Like, because transnational corporations were extracting all the surplus value out of Venezuela for years with their oil rigs, export capital, and bringing all the surplus value back to the U.S. So that didn't get invested in Venezuelan agriculture or roads or schools or anything until Hugo Chavez came along and renationalized it. Nationalized a bunch of other companies and invested in all these social programs. And that was a period of economic diversification, you know, that was much, much better than any other time when capitalism was enacted in Venezuela. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Yeah, that's all I got to say about export capital. Good chapter to read, though. I recommend you read it. It's short. It's like 8 pages. Really, really useful. Let's see what the chat has to say. Russia doesn't really export capital. No, they don't really. And we talked about China's developmental loans through the Belt and Road Initiative on the last stream, or one of the last streams. And those loans have been specifically designed based on looking at the IMF and World Bank structural adjustment loans and these terrible predatory imperialist loans. China has designed their developmental loans to combat that, to not get countries stuck in debt. And, people were accusing China of debt trapping Sri Lanka. And as Ben Norton covered, something like 88% of Sri Lanka's debt is owed to the U.S. and like less than 10% is China. So, Eddie, I like that you've been streaming more often. Keep streaming often. I like this. I will try. Thank you. So long as y'all join me. And honestly, so long as I get some super chats and keep getting some Patreon supporters and whatnot and Twitch subscribers, I will keep doing it for sure. Because that is a sign that people like it. And we've had, more Patreon supporters come on board since I've been doing this. We've had more YouTube subscribers come on board. So, yeah. Plus, it's really, really, really fun for me to interact directly with y'all. And I feel like it's good for educational purposes. Like, I don't know that there's that many other places where I could sit down and talk about a full chapter in a book, where I know a lot of people would listen to me. Honestly, I think Eddie would blow up if he had a well-produced segment on geopolitics with good visuals and professionally edited. Yeah, we're working on it. There's just not that many Marxist-Leninists, and, I'm doing better with my gear, but I don't have professional gear, and I'm just doing it on my own, the best I can. But we're working with a handful of graphic designers and editors. One of them's really, really good. So our production value will be getting better, but yeah, if you want our production value to get better faster, patreon.com/MidwesternMarks, because that's how we pay for stuff. Dang, I missed the Lenin chat. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll upload it later. On the last stream, or one of the last streams, we did a talk about imperialism's transition out of its free competition stage into its monopoly capital stage. And this time we talked about export capital. No more llama drama, LOL. What's llama drama? I've been recommending the stream Ben Norton and Brian Becker did on beginning of Ukraine. Absolutely top notch. Yeah, it's always good to have some good sources that you can recommend to normies that are sort of all-encompassing. Oh, thank you very much, David. One of the OG supporters of Midwestern Marks. I tell you what, I don't know how long David has supported us, but it's been a hot minute. Thanks, David, as always. Shout out Ben Norton and his Multipolarista YouTube channel. Yeah, they're great. Big fan. Well, it's funny because I don't think I've ever seen any of your TikToks. I appreciate that, though. I appreciate that so much because, most people are like, you're the TikTok guy. Like, no. Maybe. Maybe that's what I am in reality, but that's not what I want to be. I just want to be the Marxism guy. Ooh, another super sticker. Thank you so much, Stephen Michael Palazzolo. Thank you so much for the support. Much love to you all. Really appreciate that. Found this Cuban anti-imperialist song, Yankee Go Home, sung entirely in Spanish. I think I've heard that. I think I have heard that one. We can watch it at some point. Maybe it's an intro. Imperialism might be my favorite theory book I've read thus far. Either that or Utopian and Scientific. Nice. Those are two of my favorite for sure. I need to finish my Utopian and Scientific reading guide. I had it all written out, but I never got around to finishing it because I was super busy during wrestling. But that is also one of my favorite, one of the ones that helped me, when I was getting my footing, figuring out what Marxism's all about. Imperialism is my all-time favorite, hands down. That's just from studying geopolitics in college and then, discovering Lenin's imperialism being like, it all makes sense. The US isn't evil. Europe's not evil. They're capitalist. The only TikTok I remember seeing of yours is that thirst trap one you did. Oh, the one about being a tanky? Yeah, that one went viral on on Twitter. A lot of the left needs to read Infantile Leftism. Yes. Left-wing communism and infantile disorder. Started an account and only followed Midwestern Marx and 2 others. Wow, thank you, Eric. I didn't mean to make everyone send us money right now. But I guess this is why you're supposed to do a call to action or whatever. You're supposed to tell your supporters to like, subscribe, comment, send super chats or whatever. But thank you all so much for the support. Eric says, feel better supporting your channel and others like yours than watching major network propaganda. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And that's what we're trying to do. Yeah. I mean, journalists do that too. I guess I'll say like journalists like Richard Medhurst do a really good job of combating major network propaganda. We appreciate their work and we use their work all the time. But what we try and do that makes us different is like give you guys the tools to, see through the imperialist lies yourself. Right? Think critically about these things because dialectical materialism gives you a new lens to see politics and economics and, all of society through. And it really helps you see through the BS of imperialist politicians. So, yeah, we're all learning and educating ourselves together. And also, I want to give people the tools for organizing. I did a video recently about mutual aid and the Black Revolutionary Network, who teaches classes on how to do mutual aid. So also working on more stuff like that. I've had a handful of people tell me that they unionized their workplace. One person who was part of one of the first efforts to unionize Starbucks, it's a Midwestern Marx fan. That was awesome. My buddy told me he went into a union the other day, and the guys were sitting there at the table watching Midwestern Marx, or when he walked into a union hall for a meeting. So I'm like, that is so cool. So those are some of my favorite stories so far, but thank you all for the support. I love Midwestern Marx. Thank you. We love you. And all our friends. Rise of the Mechatangies. Mechatangies is the coolest name for a fan base ever. Sorry, it just is. It just is. All right. I have a story for you guys if you haven't seen it yet. I mean, maybe you have. Hopefully you have. I guess not everyone follows Venezuela fully. Or, I mean, as closely as I do, but I haven't even followed Venezuela, that closely throughout my entire life, including since I started studying it. I've taken breaks. I'm just looking at it really hard right now because I'm writing a book on Venezuela and U.S. imperialism in Venezuela and U.S. media on Venezuela, all that. But this is from Newsweek in 2017. Is Venezuela at war? Protesting helicopter pilot Oscar Perez is an actor known as the Venezuelan James Bond. They called this guy the Venezuelan James Bond. Why they call him that? What did he do? He flew a helicopter, a stolen government helicopter, over the country's highest court, the Venezuelan Supreme Court, and dropped 4 grenades on them and fired machine guns at them. Right? And they're calling this man the Venezuelan James Bond for literally violently attacking the Supreme Court with a stolen government helicopter. And all of corporate media praised this guy. And when the Venezuelan government did a raid on this guy and the other terrorists he was with, and they killed 2 Venezuelan police officers and injured 5 others with a car bomb and then started firing machine guns, and the Venezuelan police ended up killing Oscar Perez, the media was like, oh, what a dictatorship. Venezuela is a dictatorship of Maduro. They killed this guy, Oscar Perez, the Venezuelan James Bond. He's like, what would the U.S. do? What would the U.S. do if someone stole a government helicopter and dropped grenades on the Supreme Court and then was hiding out with terrorists? Like, we all cheered when they killed Osama bin Laden, who attacked America. You don't think other countries are going to, send the police or the government forces after people who try and drop grenades on the Supreme Court? Like, imagine how liberal media would react if anybody said this about the QAnon shaman who was there at the Capitol riots. Let's look that guy up. Like, imagine if they were calling this guy the American James Bond. Because he tried to take out the dictatorial government, the oligarchic political structure of the U.S. Look at him. The James Bond of America. I mean, it's basically the same thing. He stormed a government building as this random right-wing guy with no plan violently, except the QAnon shaman didn't have grenades in a stolen government helicopter. But if you do that to the Venezuelan government, you're not an undemocratic terrorist trying to overthrow the democratically elected president and overturn Venezuela's democratic elections. You are James Bond. What the hell? I just thought that was kind of funny. It's an old story, but I've never forgot that story. There are people who said that about the shaman. They're called OAN. Oh. Yeah, I guess I haven't read OAN in a while. Like, I do try and diversify, the news I'm getting. But come on now. I can't be reading OAN. Those people are ridiculous. Just out of control. Hey, Eddie, here's the video that details U.S. imperialist intervention in Latin America, countries in the beginning of the Civil War, right up to the Bolivia coup, which elected Evo Morales. Yeah, I'll add that to the list, too. Thank you, Jacob.
You do.
Whoops. I will add it to the list. Whoops. I accidentally opened some lady playing violin with a cat filter. It was cool.
On November 10th.
Contras to Cages. Oh, I have heard of this, yeah.
Hi, I'm John Green, and this is Crash.
That's not what I wanted to open. All right. Sorry that took me so long. LOL, love that guy. John Green, yeah. He's been becoming more Marxist in his analysis. Definitely so. What's this video I wanted to watch? Oh my gosh, someone sent me a video about tankies to watch. It's 30 minutes long. Dude, and it's all the lamest narratives about tankies. Anti-Americanism. Weird. I don't know. What would the U.S. do? Didn't FBI raid an ex-president's residence? Yes, and the U.S. intelligence agencies killed the former U.S. president, John F. Kennedy. Depends on if they have American flags in their Twitter bio. I mean, they let those MFers get away with raiding the Capitol and protesting machine guns outside the FBI. True, white people do not get targeted as much by the police when they're doing stuff like that. However, they didn't just get away with it either. Like the QAnon shaman, I think they cracked down on that guy pretty hard, actually. I don't know what kind of sentence he got, but it wasn't ideal. Yeah, he got 41 months in prison. Like, that's years of his life in prison. So he didn't get shot, though. Are you sure that John Green is becoming more Marxist in his analysis? No, I'm not sure. I made that up. I'm just reading into everything he says. I just like to take John Green videos and say, like, you know, here's what Marx would say about this. Let's get into some drama. Ben and Voosh have been talking shit. Ben politics and Voosh? Oh my gosh. That's a beef that makes me want to jump out a fourth-story window. Benjamin politics and Voosh. Like, they're both wrong about pretty much everything. Oh, it's Prax Ben now. That's his name. Prax Ben versus Vaush. They had a debate once. On abortion, which was the most boring debate I've ever seen. Vaush versus... And Ben's a libertarian who's pro-life, or he's anti-choice. Like, so you want to get rid of the government except for when it's stuff you like. So you literally want a dictatorship of Benjamin politics. You know, I'm a man and I don't like abortion, so we're going to take that away. The government's going to enforce that. But the government's not allowed to, you know, build anything or give people jobs or do anything for social welfare. It's all got to go into stopping people from having abortions. That's what the government's for. Like, get the hell out of here. Like, tell me you have no principles at all without telling me you have no principles. I'm a libertarian who's freaking anti-choice. Just ridiculous. $2 super sticker. Thank you, Matt Gear. Thank you so much for the support. Much love. Much love. Did you end up watching Marxist Paul last night? I didn't. That's what we should watch. That is what we should watch. What do we want to watch? Marxist Paul on the Philippines? I was a little worried about this because I don't know that much about the Philippines, right? And like last time I talked about Marxist Paul, I had a criticism of him. So I hope this doesn't end up being something I think I should criticize. But we'll see. Watching Ben politics and Vaush debate is like watching a mute person trying to teach another mute person how to talk. Yes. Yes. Russian ML, but have some contrasting views to you. Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, I can check that out. All right, let's check this out.
Whenever socialist Republicans think of revolution, we often call back to heroic depictions of the GPO aflame during the 1916 Rising, or of the Pikes of the United Irishmen during the 1798 Rebellion.
Isn't Paul like a Maoist, though, who's anti... I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but isn't he anti, like, the U.S. building socialism, and he's one of those who thinks, like, the third world is going to build socialism first, and then the U.S. will collapse and be balkanized? Is he like a third worldist Maoist, or is he not one of those kind of Maoists? Because he calls himself a socialist Republican. Like, if you go back to the early, you know, American radical Republicans, they were basically socialists. They were arguing for like a mass redistribution of wealth and land at the end of the Civil War when slavery was ending for everybody. You know, and the idea of socialism is that you're first going to build a socialist republic before establishing communism. So that's what I think the Marxist-Leninist position is. Maoist third worldists have a different position, but maybe that isn't Marx. Or, I mean, maybe that isn't Marxist Paul. Confirmed synth leftist. Haha, Prax Ben said China's imperialist towards Tibet. Yeah, he's a joke. He's a Maoist, good on everything but China takes. He's not a third world Maoist, I believe. Okay. I'll have to do more investigation, but whatever.
All of these images are certainly useful points of reference for our minds to begin to sketch out an understanding of what a revolution is and what it involves. However, we often find ourselves thinking of revolutions as historical events of the bygone past, rather than as living, ongoing processes happening right now at this very moment. This video will hopefully serve as a snapshot of one of the most advanced examples of an ongoing communist-led revolution in the world today, namely the National Democratic Revolution in the Philippines. This revolution, involving hundreds of thousands of dedicated revolutionaries and progressives, within a support base of millions, is fighting to change Filipino society in a truly radical way by breaking the chains of imperialism, semi-feudalism, and bureaucrat capitalism, paving the way for future socialist society. Today we're going to take a look at this revolution's history, its theory, and its practice. But first, if you're new here, then go ahead and subscribe and turn on the notification bell below for socialist educational content and analysis. If you're in a position to do so, then consider tossing a couple of euro or dollar per month over on Patreon. The channel is currently moving towards releasing videos on a weekly basis, which requires getting the help of an editor. So any contributions you make will be going directly back into the channel, improving both the quantity and the quality of these videos. You can also give one-time donations over on Ko-fi, linked in the description box below. Lastly, drop this video a like, leave a comment about your favorite socialist revolution, and share this video around on social media as the YouTube. In 1968, a storm swept over the Philippines, a materially rich Southeast Asian nation of 7,641 islands. The country's Communist Party, the Communist Party of the Philippines, having already been founded in 1930 by Crisanto Evangelista, was effectively refounded 35 years later as a principles revolutionary organization. The Philippines had a long history of revolution under both Spanish and US colonialism in its past, begun by the movement of Andres Bonifacio, who's honored by the National Democratic Revolution as the founding father of modern Filipino anti-imperialism. Bonifacio's revolutionary tradition was revitalized by the new CDP leadership. This event was known as the First Great Rectification Movement. The rectification, led by figures such as Jose Maria Sison, one of the founders of the youth organization Kabatang Makabayan, broke from the old party leadership of Jesus Laba, which chose to abandon the struggle previously fought by the Hukbalahap, the communist guerrilla force which had fought against Japanese occupation during the Second World War, by effectively dissolving the party. Many Hukbalahap veterans would play key roles in the initiation of the National Democratic Revolution, which would soon follow. And apologies for the terrible pronunciations. There's undoubtedly going to be many more in this video to come. The rectification was heavily influenced by the Sino-Soviet split between the revisionist USSR led by Khrushchev and the Revolutionary People's Republic of China led by Chairman Mao. The revolutionaries took up the theories of Mao Zedong, at the time called Mao Zedong Thought, and applied it to the conditions of the Philippines. In his book, written shortly after the rectification took place, Sison commented on the importance of the Chinese experience to the foundation of the Filipino movement, writing that the universal theory of Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong Thought, and the great proletarian cultural revolution have already had an incalculable impact on the concrete practice of the Philippine Revolution. The new Mao Zedong Thought line of the Communist Party of the Philippines certainly contrasts.
Yeah, I want to learn more about this revolution before I watch this video and comment on it. Because, you know, again, I've criticized Marxist Paul for being an ultra every time I've seen him. And he's, you know, talking about the importance of cultural revolution and stuff, which is a part of the history. But he's clearly, you know, pointing towards Mao Zedong Thought as like, you know, the guiding principle and the number one thing that led them through this revolution. And honestly, I would like to research it from not that biased of a perspective, especially, you know, just given my past experiences with MLMs kind of distorting history to make groups like the Shining Path in Peru seem like they were good when they weren't, and when anybody in Peru will tell you that they are terrorists who made the Communist Party look bad and was probably funded by the CIA. Because like you just said, cultural revolution has been, you know, or Mao Zedong Thought is universally applicable, which is a lot of the ways that Marxists that MLMs in the modern era are dogmatic. You know, like they literally argue that what Mao did in China is universally applicable, in that every single place needs a cultural revolution. You know, he's arguing for the cultural revolution, which fine if you want to argue for that, but you know, China today looks back and calls the cultural revolution like the worst mistake in their history. You know what I mean? Like they think the cultural revolution was a huge mistake, although there were good parts of it, or a lot of people think, you know, it was a good idea. And I definitely think there were good parts of it. There, the Cultural Revolution was definitely vital in helping them move out of a feudal economic structure and out of it. But, then you had like Pol Pot calling himself a Maoist while being backed by the CIA, and the Shining Path in Peru being like violent terrorist organizations and killing peasants and acting like, this is Cultural Revolution. This is the protracted People's War. And I'm definitely not saying that's what was going on in the Philippines. I have no idea. I literally have no idea, but I would just like to read about it rather than watch a YouTube video about it on stream. Till I know. No investigation, no right to speak. Mao himself said that. So Marxist Paul can't be mad. Pol Pot was a Kissinger puppet, literally. Because China is an ethno-state? Are you serious? I hope that was a joke. China only wants Tibet as a buffer state. That's so not true. Have you seen Daniel Dumbrell's video about Tibet? Oh, let me go on YouTube. This is so interesting. And there's a reason, like literally there's like 6% maybe of the Taiwan population, according to Western polls, that support separatism. There's like almost none in Tibet outside of the diaspora, outside of people who have fled Tibet, usually settled by the CIA and have become professional propagandists. But before Mao liberated Tibet by literally just walking in and, telling the peasants or asking the peasants to turn against the Dalai Lama, who had been torturing them and had been gouging their eyes out if they didn't obey everything he said. And had been doing at this time, China had this policy of foot binding where women would like bind up their feet super tight in order to make their feet like a hook because it was considered more beautiful or whatever. And all of these things were ended when China liberated the people of Tibet. The people were living under, horrible feudal oppression. And really Buddhism, this idea that American liberals often think is like, mystical and sort of have this attachment to, is this sort of mystical Eastern philosophy. And, nothing wrong with Buddhism as a religion in itself, but the Dalai Lama was living in a mansion, like he was the feudal lord of the land. And he was saying, just work and don't care about your possessions, and don't care about life, really just work. And forget all earthly attachments, and you will reach enlightenment. That's a really good thing to tell a bunch of peasants, if you want them to just work for you and enrich you while they're basically enslaved, which is exactly what was going on in Tibet before the Communist Party came through. Now Tibet is modernized, industrialized. Their people have been brought out of poverty. They all have Wi-Fi, clean water, food, when they could still be under, feudal occupation, where they would literally get their eyes gouged out. Which Daniel Dumbrell talks about in this video.
And then also conversely show you the conditions that their serfs lived in. Basically, they're slaves. And it's not something you hear about too much in the West, because I think perhaps the hypocrisy, or it would call into question the legitimacy of somebody who escaped, an owner of a home like this who escaped, talking about freeing Tibet without adding the context into what Tibetans were liberated from after they left. No matter what problems you think Tibet might have now, there is a very dark history that not many people dispute it, but also not many people talk about it. So let's go for a little tour. I went on a tour earlier with a descendant of the serfs, and he was a second level serf. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But what I might do is I'm going to go on a private tour here to give you guys the down low on most of the important points. And I might cut in some video of him talking about it as well while we're walking. And the biscuits were imported from India, are the actual product. The bedroom of with their heads, they would sleep on this bed, and one would sleep this way and one would sleep that way, with their heads kind of connecting over there. But here, same kind of a thing. You can see actually that round thing is a Louis Vuitton from the 30s. That's probably worth a lot now. And they've got a lot of other items like imported lipsticks and makeup and things like that.
So this is the Dalai Lama, who's been praised and, propped up by the West ever since. I don't know about y'all, but I had to watch the Dalai Lama speak when I was in like a freshman in high school. And it was for some, speaking engagement paid for by some Western corporation. And part of the reason that they've done that is because Tibet has always been, they've tried to use Tibet as a foothold to destabilize China. That's what the Free Tibet movement is. And that's, why they get people in the diaspora to support hashtag Free Tibet when very few Tibetans actually support that. Because as Daniel Dumbrill's saying here, and as the tour guide is saying, their grandparents were serfs. Their grandparents were slaves to the Dalai Lama, who is living in immense wealth, right? And this is the Dalai Lama who was talking about abandon all your earthly possessions, right? Just abandon all your earthly possessions and do hard labor and don't have any commodities, and then you'll achieve enlightenment. That guy had a Louis Vuitton bag. Like, some things about the capitalists never change, huh? Or I guess the feudal lords in that case. So yeah, Mao liberated them from like literal slavery. And when people say free Tibet, I say, what do you mean? Mao already did. Daniel is extremely based. He is, for sure. Dalai Lama is a CIA asset. Yeah, now he is. Now he's literally just a spokesperson for the Free Tibet movement, which is the most CIA NED funded thing ever. There is no Free Tibet movement in China, which I was talking about this today on Twitter. With Syria and Libya, the reason they were called the Syrian and Libyan opposition coalitions is because there wasn't any strong opposition or separatist movement there for the U.S. to support. Gaddafi and Assad had widespread support, or, if people didn't support them, they at least didn't want to violently overthrow the government. It's similar to Ukraine. Most people didn't want to overthrow the government in the Euromaidan protests, so the U.S. just, focuses on Right Sector, IDAR, and the Azov Battalion, these violent neo-Nazis who can escalate the protests into violence. Except with Libya and Syria, the U.S. had to weld a bunch of doing welding, how you weld metal together. The U.S. welded together these terrorist groups into the opposition coalitions and then just dumped a bunch of arms and funding into them. And in the case of Libya, they literally were transporting terrorists in from surrounding countries and from surrounding areas, and Saudi Arabia was, to form this opposition coalition. So, for them to say that free Taiwan or free Hong Kong or free Tibet are a big thing on the ground in China, it doesn't take much. They'll just say that without it being true. And then, they'll take the diaspora. They'll take wealthy people who fled during the communist revolution or whose grandparents fled, or just, opportunists who are willing to leave China and just throw shade and, do propaganda about their home country, destabilization propaganda for the U.S. That's how those movements like Free Tibet work, and they're funded through NGOs and the NED, and it's really nefarious. It's especially nefarious because they're weaponizing the identity of Tibetan people to try and make Tibetan people's lives worse, right? Free Tibet, when, as I said, Tibet's already free, and the U.S. wants to, they're talking about bringing the Dalai Lama back when he was the one enslaving them. Free Tibet and put the slave owners back in power. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Free the American South. Let's bring back the Confederacy. That's what you sound like. Imagine if China was arguing for that. The Union the Union was authoritarian, and Abe Lincoln was a dictator, and they killed people to, take over the American South in the Civil War. Free the Confederacy. That's what the U.S. imperialists sound like to other countries. Do we have an equivalent of someone exposing the Dalai Lama? I don't know. Daniel Dumbrill kind of does. I mean, the people of China does. The Union is an ethno-state. Now that would just be that would be the dumbest thing I've ever heard, I guess. That would be even dumber than saying free Tibet, I think. Unparalleled Dev is here. Hello. The Yahtzees were obsessed with the Dalai Lama. They were obsessed with so much weird stuff. Now you have like the Falun Gong cult, this right wing, for some reason QAnon connected, but also like NED connected separatist cult in the US. And their logo basically looks like a swastika. It's very weird, which is also an old Hindu symbol, so maybe it's from that, but I don't know. I don't know. I want to kiss you. Mwah. Thank you. Couldn't switch to the majority of chats, so I switched to live chat. I couldn't see. Well, let me see if there's anything else I want to watch quick. That's just completely inappropriate. You took it too far, your boy Chuck. Feudalism being replaced by socialism is historical progress. Literally. I mean, they just advanced the mode of production and ended slavery. All right, y'all. I'm probably going to call it a day. We've been going for an hour and a half. I'm actually super tired today. I can't believe I made it this long. And we had some 3-hour streams earlier this week, but definitely streaming more. We'll be on here more. Today, I didn't have a whole show planned out, really. I just wanted to do the part about Lenin's export capital. I thought it would take like 40 minutes, but we were able to go an hour and a half just hanging out. So thank you all for the support. Thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing, which boosts us in the algorithm. Thank you to all the people who sent super chats to support us financially. If you want to, patreon.com/MidwesternMarks. Join our Discord server at the Midwestern Marks link tree. All right, I'm going to go to sleep. Peace out, everyone. Thanks for hanging.